Um, so, yeah, welcome everyone to DevFest in Singapore. This is my first time in Singapore, so I'm really excited to be here and have this opportunity to give you guys an overview, basically, about our Google Maps APIs, which is the product that I support. So my name is Daniels Lee. I'm a developer programs engineer working on the developer relations team at Google, and I am here to talk to you guys about Google Maps. Can I get a show of hands really quick? How many people in here have used the V3 API of Maps? I see maybe like 15 to 10 of you. How about V2? Are there any V2 developers here? All right, awesome. But it seems like the majority of people out there also have never really used it. So this will be a really great talk just to show you guys what are some of the basic capabilities and functionalities that you can do with Maps and how you can sort of change the experience. It's sort of a user experience to be able to visualize geotag data, geo-content. And so basically, yeah, what are we going to learn about today with the Maps API? And I thought it would be a fun way to, rather than going through sort of this typical agenda of showing you different features, there's tons and tons of features and different things that you can do with the Maps API. I thought it'd be a really cool exercise to just show you guys sort of the process of building an actual usable application, which is actually live right now, and you can actually go on it today, but also take you through the steps on how to build this application. And so my coworker, my partner in crime, Luke, who sits in Sydney now, we sort of came up with an idea of building an application which would be actually very useful to me. So there's two things that I really love, and it's coffee. I've been really getting into coffee lately. So these are just some of the pictures. I make a lot of coffee in San Francisco, and I love to make coffee for people. Some of my customers right here. And I also really love Maps. So we thought it'd be a really cool and fun way to structure our talk, to combine, well, what if we can combine Maps plus coffee? You would get something really awesome. So, so hope you guys get to enjoy sort of the process. So the idea that we had is, what if we had, well, I'm traveling, right? I'm traveling around different parts of Southeast Asia and Sydney for DevFest. So it'd be really cool if I could use an application to take with me to help me find really good coffee. And so we're going to build sort of this where is coffee application. And I guess, so the first thing that you need, well, obviously you see here is a map. You've all seen a map before. And I've had it center my location to where I think I approximately am, somewhere in Singapore. So you can pan the map around. You can switch different map types. We have 4 different default map types. We have like a satellite view, in addition to hybrid, which overlays the roads on top of the satellite imagery as well. We also have a terrain map type, which includes sort of elevation data. You can sort of see the terrain of a landscape through that easily. You can pan around, you can zoom, obviously. So this is a basic map. There's nothing really interesting, useful here, but it's the way you start building any application. And so what does it take to actually have a map like that? Well, I'm assuming a lot of you are familiar with HTML, and in here you can see it's just a simple body tag with nothing but a single HTML container. One div element with an ID so that I can access that DOM element in my JavaScript. And in the CSS, I'm going to specify some basic dimensions of how big I want my map to be. Right? Set a height of 100%. The width will automatically maximize if I don't specify it. Nothing new there. In my JavaScript, so I'm basically downloading the Maps API with the script tag, and that script tag defines a bunch of this entire Google.Maps API references library, a collection of objects. And in here, all I'm doing is I'm initializing a new map object. I'm passing in my div element into the constructor, in addition to specifying some various parameters, some options I can have on the default initialization of the map. So this would be my zoom level, my center lat long coordinate of where I want the map to start out with, and then the default map type that I want to show on load. And then at the very bottom there, we have our own event object which takes care of different browser compatibility stuff. So you can register event listeners to your HTML DOM elements and have it work across all browsers easily. So I'm just saying on the load of this page, I want to call the init function, which is going to create my map. Cool, so we have a map, right? First place to start. Haven't been able to do anything with coffee yet. I'll have to get to that later. But this is definitely where you start. You start out simple and you build up upon it. So what else is really cool about the V3 API? Well, the V3 API was sort of completely revamped and rehauled the entire Maps API, built entirely from scratch to focus on mobile performance. It's really optimized to run well on mobile browsers. So the engineers in Sydney do a really amazing job of keeping the download size really, really small, and there's tons and tons of different techniques on how to do that. So with the V3 API, you get both a web browser-based map application in addition to having it run well on your mobile app as well. So I have it on mobile because actually I want to load my application as I'm traveling around to different countries. So what else is a cool new feature to add to this? Well, it'd be cool if I could have my application know exactly where I'm located, right? So if I could have it detect my if I could have it geolocate myself and know exactly where I am on the map or in the world, and then initialize my map on there, that'd be really cool. So you can't really tell what's happening here, but it actually did detect my location based on a geolocation property, HTML5, and you can see if I pan away, it actually pans me back to where I'm currently located. And I think if I zoom in, I should be close to somewhere around where I am now. So what does this look like? So this is using a standard, well, it's an HTML5 geolocation property, and it's calling a getCurrentPosition, which you pass in a JavaScript, a callback function, which will pass into it, it's my current location, my position, my map coordinates, right? And then I'm telling my map to pan to this location anytime when the map initializes. So it's as simple as that. And so it'd be really, really useful though to actually see exactly where I'm located. So that's the point of a marker, right? Is it should actually highlight a very specific position and point on the map. All right. So that marker, that red marker, is actually where hopefully it's pretty close to. I'm not actually really sure where I am actually on the map, but I'm going to trust that my map application knows this. So if you have a red marker, it's really easy to add markers. Markers are just overlays. There's different types of overlays you can add, and this is just one example of it. So in the code here, you can see that in addition to panning the map to my current location, creating a new instance of a marker, user location marker, and I'm not sure if you can notice, but I placed the user location marker in the global namespace because I want to be able to access that later in a callback function and so forth. So that's the reason why I did that. And I'm basically plotting my marker onto the map by calling a setMap function. So this is a little bit different than V2. In the version 2 of the API, for those of you who have developed on that platform before, there was this concept of having the map have a collection of all of your overlays and all your controls. Everything that was added to the map was responsible for knowing exactly what was being added to it. So in order to add a marker or an overlay, you'd have to call map.addOverlay or map.addControl, right, or map.add whatever. So the map became this really, really giant and bulky object in V2, which was the center console of everything, right? In version 3, this was changed because it's much more intuitive. So it's based on the MVC design, which is a model view control, and instead of the map keeping track of every map object to be added or feature to be added onto itself, you're having these features add itself onto the map instead. So you're basically switching. It's reverse. It's the marker adding itself to the map. It's the control that's adding it to the map itself. That's a little bit different for those of you who talk about migration to V3. So it would be really more interesting, actually, instead of seeing a red marker, to have it look more intuitive. Because the red marker is cool, but I want it to be sort of more intuitive. That this is actually where I'm currently located. So this is something very similar, right? For those of you who have maybe mobile apps, Android devices, on your GMM app, we have this like blue dot which indicates my current location. So this is actually very, very easy using the Maps API. This is called a custom marker. And this is essentially the same marker object that I placed on my previous map, with the exception that I'm passing in a custom image. It's just a URL to my custom image. And in my JavaScript, you can see I'm specifying a new marker image object, and then I'm passing in the path to my image, in addition to some optional arguments, which in V3 we support CSS, or I'm sorry, we support image sprites for marker images. So you can pass in a sprite image which contains multiple icons, and then you can specify the dimensions of the image, its anchor point, where it gets started, and the origin. And then the last statement is we're just creating a marker and setting the icon to the marker image that we created. Cool. So this is so we have a map with a location marker now that indicates where I'm currently located on the map. However, as many of you know, sometimes based on your device, based on your hardware, your location does have an accuracy, right? It only knows as far as how powerful or how strongly my device can locate me or my browser. And so it would be really useful to have an accuracy, maybe circle overlay or something like that. And that's actually very, very easy to do. So so we can have something like this. You can't really see it yet because it actually is pretty accurate. If I zoom in, you can start to see this circle overlay, which indicates sort of my location radius of the accuracy of where I am. And this is actually very easy in V3. In V2, we had you'd probably need to create a custom image, maybe in Photoshop or in Illustrator, upload it to your server. Then you have to add that as a custom overlay, and then you have to center it to the marker. And it's also, if you move the marker, if the marker moves around, you'd also have to update the custom image as well. It's this multiple step process. But in V3, we already have two things that really, really helps out with this. We have built-in circle overlays, which is actually part of the core API. So you can just create, as you can see here, a new instance of the circle object. And you can pass in different arguments to change the way it looks. So you can give it a fill color, a different stroke, opacity, things like that. In addition to that, you can do something really, really cool in V3, which was not possible in V2. And I won't be talking about it in this talk, but it's the MVC architecture, which allows you to take one MVC object and bind one of its properties to another MVC object's property. And this is really, really convenient. And this is what's happening in that middle section there. It's saying, I want to bind this accuracy circle overlay. I want to bind its center point to the marker's position. So anytime one of those properties changes, if I move my marker to another location on the map, the circle is automatically going to update itself and move with it. So essentially, they're acting as one solid unit instead of two. It's really, really convenient. There's tons and tons of really cool stuff you can do with that. And there's some articles online and documentation I'd encourage you guys to check out. In here, in this last function, it's just showing you the it uses location function, which shows you how easy it is to get the accuracy of your location. Again, thanks to HTML5. So the geolocation object has returns back to your current position, callback a position object, which inside also contains an accuracy property, which indicates your radius in meters. So it's really, really easy, is what I'm saying. So the next thing which would be really, really useful as I'm using my map when I'm mobile, right, when I'm traveling, sometimes I like to pan around the map and see what else is around, and sometimes I'll get lost and I'll forget exactly where I was. So it'd be really useful to actually have some easy way, some easy mechanism on having the map pan back to my current location. And so this is something that we could do using a custom control. In the initial map or in the maps that you see here, we already have a bunch of map controls. So we have things like, on the left-hand side, we have a navigation control, which allows the user to click on the zoom buttons or pan left, right, up, down buttons. And then at the top, we have map type control, which allows the user to select different map types. And these are all optional. You can toggle these on or off if you want. But it would be cool. You can also place your own custom controls. So you can see I've added a My Location button, which, if I'm touring around, I'm going around different parts of Singapore, and I click back on My Location, it'll always bring me back to where I'm currently located. So how does this look? What does it take to build something like this? It's very easy. So you have your CSS, which is basically, you're going to take your div elements, your HTML element, and apply some CSS to make it look like a button. There's nothing very new there. In your JavaScript, in the same sort of functions related to getting your current location, you can have your application sort of always update where you currently located. So if you're moving around, you're walking around, you're driving around different places, the watch position function, which is also part of HTML5, will always call the function that you pass in anytime your position gets updated. So the setUsersPosition function will then get called with the new position that's getting passed in as an argument. And I'm basically telling that to update my location marker to that location, right? And then the last function, that's where I'm adding my custom control. And this is also a little bit different than in V2 of the API. So custom controls in V2, you had to extend the gcontrol class, and then you had to implement some methods and so forth. In version 3, a custom control is nothing more just than an HTML DOM element. It's just a container. It's a div element that you create here. I'm applying a class name to it to apply the styling, setting my inner HTML, and then I'm telling the map where to place my custom div element, and that's what's happening here. It's the google.maps.control position. I'm saying I want to put this control at the very top right corner of my map, and apply a click event listener so that whenever a user clicks on the button, it's going to pan the map back to my user location. That's what's happening here. So custom controls are really nothing more than your standard HTML container. So just to recap, what do we have so far? So we have a pretty good start in terms of we're sort of halfway there on building an actual useful application. We already have a map that has the ability to locate where I am. It uses a marker to plot a location, a blue location dot. It uses a custom marker image. It's also using a circle overlay to show my accuracy. And lastly, we have added a custom control to the map so it makes it easy for me to get back to my current location if I get lost. But what about actually the reason why I built the app? And it's coffee, right? So what we thought would be really, really cool is, well, as I go around and go to different coffee shops or different places, and this doesn't even just have to be coffee shops. This could be any interesting point, any interesting place that I've been to or visited, and I can give it a store name. I can, remember the address, and I can give it a rating, so that when I go back to this map and I'm traveling, I can remember the places that I've been to that I really liked. In addition to that, it's public, so there's nothing that's stopping you guys or the people that live in these countries everywhere, the locals, to come and actually help me out and add stores for me, places that they think I should check out. So the next steps are, well, how am I going to actually add a shop to this application? And so the approach that we took initially, well, let's just add a new control. Let's add a button, simple as that, add shop, which is going to place a marker at the very center location of my map, right? And it's going to open up this new type of overlay that you see, which is called an info window. And in your info window, basically is a mechanism for you to display just more high-level, more detailed information about the current point that it's anchored to. And so in here, we have a little form that says add a coffee shop. Like I said, it could be add a something else shop if you want to port this into something else. You can have a field for your name, the address of it, and the rating. And so this is just how do you add info windows on your map very easily. Well, we have a function called add new shop button, and similar to how we added the my location control, this is just adding a new add shop button control at the very top right. So same thing, we're applying a class, sending in HTML. And the bottom example is just a snippet that just shows, well, for those who sometimes, like myself, we use JavaScript toolkits like jQuery. The version 3 Maps API is just your JavaScript client-side API as well, and it interfaces really, really well. So with toolkits like jQuery, for example. So it's very easy to use with that, if that's something that's interesting to you. Second, I'm going to create a function which will add my shop marker at the center location of my map. In addition to opening up an info window, And an info window is its own object in version 3. For you V2 developers out there, info windows acted kind of differently. You can only have one single instance of an info window, and it was kind of heavyweight object. It was a little bit slow in opening it up, closing it, repositioning it. In version 3, you can have as many info windows as you want. So if you wanted to have 100 different info windows open at a time, your map wouldn't look very pretty, but you can certainly do it, right? And so, but if you, let's say you wanted to maintain that consistency, you wanted to only open one info window at a time, it's the reason I declared my info window object in the global namespace. So instead of creating a new info window every time I want to open one up, I'm going to just simply update its position, and that will automatically sort of move the info window to that new location, right? So that's what the middle function is doing. You can see it's also adding a click event listener to my marker, so that when I click on the marker, or when I click on the map, I'm sorry, it's going to add the shop marker to the current position where I clicked on. So that's sort of this behavior here, if I can move around, right? And the last function, it's showing the shop form in my info window. So it's just setting the position of my marker at the center, and then the info window is calling an open function, which you're passing in the map object that you want to bind the info window to. So similar to markers, it's the same concept of the overlays adding themselves onto the map instead of the map adding the overlay onto itself. So the info window is opening up against the map, and the second argument, you're passing in some type of anchor point. You're passing in the marker which you want to anchor that info window to. So one really cool feature, so if you notice in that last map, we had opened up an info window, and there was a name field and there was an address field. But the address field is cumbersome to type, especially if I'm mobile and especially if I'm in a city that I've never been in before. So we could use something really cool like reverse geocoding, which the Maps API offers, and it's really fast. So I can actually have I can have my map, sorry, thank you, take any point on the map, right, and take its lat long and pass it to our geocoding service and have it return back an actual physical address that's most closely matched to that location. So you can see here, we've enhanced sort of the add shop feature by, when you click on any location, let's do a reverse geocode of that lat long coordinate, and let's return back an actual address and pre-populate the address field, so the users don't always have to type that in themselves, because we don't actually care, right? We don't really care to look up the address of a shop and type it in. So this is also very easy in the Maps API. We have a geocoder object with a single method called geocode. So it's geocoder. That geocode is the function that you would call. And in that function, you'd pass in a request object, which contains a number of different options, a number of different properties that you can set, which will change sort of what the geocoding service will return back to you. One of the properties is a lat long coordinate, which you can see up here. And if you pass in the lat long in your request object to a geocoding service, it's going to do a reverse geocode and convert that to a physical address. Let's say you passed in a physical address instead. The geocoding service is smart enough to know, oh, you want to do a forward geocoding instead, and then it'll return back to you the lat long. So this example is showing a reverse geocode, which is different than forward geocoding, which takes the physical address and converts it to lat long. So it's just the opposite. And in the geocoding function, geocode, you're passing in a callback function which receives the results object from your geocoding service. In addition to that, you have a status, which indicates whether the geocode was successful or not. In some regions, there's sometimes better geocoding service than others. But in this one, looks like we have pretty successful geocodes around this area, of course. And I'm basically just setting my HTML, my new shop address input field. I'm setting its value to the address that's returned. So that's what's happening here. So we have a pretty good mechanism for adding shops, but we didn't actually talk about how we're actually saving it. And so the Maps API is a client-side based API. It's really just like the front end. It's the way you visualize and build an application to visualize this data. But in terms of saving a shop, well, this is going to require some backend, and I'm not going to go too much into sort of exactly like what is happening on the backend server. But basically, when I'm adding a new shop, and I can type in a name, for example, and you click on and give it a rating, click on the add button, it's going to take that information. It's going to take the coordinate of the shop that I've added. It's going to take the name and the rating. It's going to pass all of that in through an asynchronous request, HTTP request to my local backend, which in this example we're using an App Engine server to receive these HTTP calls and store this information into data store. And as you can see, when we added a new shop, we created a new marker. This is just another marker with a custom marker image applied. And Luke knows that my favorite color is purple, so he made this really pretty icon for me. So what does it take? So you know about custom marker images, which we covered a few slides earlier. So we just creating a new marker, passing in a custom marker image. And in my save shop function, this is where my AJAX calls are going to happen, right? This is where I'm taking the information that I captured from the info window form, and I'm going to be sending that off to my local backend server. But I didn't really show that code there, but that's where it would be. And and then after that happens, I'm taking my new shop marker and I'm calling the set map null, which is basically clearing the marker. When you set map and you pass in null to it, you're essentially saying, I want to remove this marker from this map and hide it, right? I'm closing my info window, and then I'm creating a new marker which contains my new shop, my customized shop icon marker, passing that in, right? So the bottom event listener there. So I'm attaching a DOM listener to my info window, and the event is called DOM ready. And so this is important for those of you who, when you're creating dynamic content inside of your info window, you can't access the HTML containers of developments inside that info window because the opening of an info window happens asynchronously. So you need to register a DOM ready event which gets fired when that DOM gets initialized, and then you can access it and then generate your content, which is the reason why we have that here. Awesome. So the next step is obviously, well, once we add shops, it's only useful if I can actually find them again, right? So I don't actually have any shops added here right now. Oh, I do. Oh shoot. I don't even know who added this. But so basically, when I'm finding a shop, so what we're doing here is, well, we're saying every time the map loads or when the map goes idle, there's a really incredibly useful event called idle, where you can register an idle event on a map, and it fires anytime that the map state somehow changes. So if the bounds change, if the zoom level changes, right? If you pan the map a little bit, it's not going to call it multiple times, right? It's going to know somehow intuitively that, okay, the user's kind of done playing with it, call the idle event, and then we're going to go out and then fetch from our local data store, give me the list of stores within my map bounds, within this bounding box query, right? And then I'm going to take that result and I'm going to plot these custom markers onto my map, as you see here. And here's the event listener I'm registering to my map, right? It's just an event.add listener function passing in my map, registering the idle event, calling load stores in view when the event gets fired. And in that function, again, I'm not showing you the AJAX calls to our backend server, but you can imagine it's just doing a simple XML HTTP request object, right? An XHR request to my backend to get my list. So that is sequentially going to call my add stores function, which takes the result of shops that gets passed in. And there's a lot of code here. I don't think you really need to read through all of it, but it's essentially just iterating through the list of shops that have been returned in my bounding box query. And then for each shop, I'm going to be adding a new store marker onto the map. And that's what this is doing. Lastly, this is just a function that the previous slide was referencing. the add store marker function, which just takes a shop object and then creates a new custom marker for it onto the map. Awesome. So I've added the ability to add a shop, save a shop, and then also find shops. But there'd be one really, really awesome feature which would also make my life really, really easy once I can find these shops. Well, once I have these shops, it would be really, really cool if I can actually get directions, right? Like walking directions, for example. So version 3 of the API supports multiple different types of travel modes, that's what they call it, which is driving directions, walking directions, and bicycling directions in some regions. And so this is really cool. For our app, we sort of knew that I was going to be around more urban cities, and so I think we decided on walking directions. So hopefully this will work. Oh, awesome. So if I click on directions, you can see that it generated a polyline which showed me the easiest walking directions from my start point to my shop that has awesome coffee in it, right? So this is really, really convenient and easy to do in version 3. Again, I have to say for V2 developers, the directions API in the Maps API has been really, really completely overhauled, revamped and restructured, and it's much, much more intuitive. It may seem like more code initially, but it's actually much more intuitive for you to actually program with it. So in V3, we have essentially two main directions objects, which are very, very important for you to know. And one is the direction service, and the other is the directions renderer. The direction service is the object which is responsible for communicating your directions request to the server and getting back a result. Right? It's doing nothing visual there. The directions renderer takes any directions result object and easily renders those directions either on your map or within an HTML container where it generates a list of all your different steps. Right? So your directions result object contains these different steps and waypoints and so forth to get from point A to point B. And you can pass it into your directions renderer and have it easily render either a polyline on your map or this list form. So that's what this is doing over here. So we're creating a directions service object, right, and a new directions renderer. The reason why we have suppressed markers as set to true in the directions renderer is because, well, on my map, your directions renderer will normally take a result, and if you pass in a map object to your renderer, it's going to plot markers for every start destination point and waypoint, in addition to drawing a polyline that connects all of them. But if I say suppress markers, it's only going to draw the polylines. And this is useful because in our map, we already have custom markers, right? Our location marker and our shop marker is already on there. So we don't need to show, in addition, 2 more markers at the start destination points. That's why we suppress it. In the getDirections2 function, this is where you're passing in a shop object, right? And this is where we're generating our directions request. So that's what the request variable is doing. That's the object that specifies different properties and parameters to pass into my service. I'm giving it an origin, I'm giving it a destination of where I'm trying to go, and then a travel mode, right? In here, you can also pass in probably different waypoints. So in the Maps API, I think we support a total of 8 waypoints for the free API, and if you are a Premier customer, I think it goes up to 23 or so. So you can pass in multiple waypoints if you want to create this multiple destination step map, right? And then lastly, we're calling the route function on our directions service object, which essentially takes our request and sends it off to our server and then gets back a result, which is you can see in the callback function there. Awesome. So this is embarrassing. And so basically, this is an app that runs really, really well on mobile. And if you go to that link at the top, it's actually a live app right now. So I could actually encourage everyone in here to go visit whereiscoffee.appspot.com. And you can go on there right now and help me find some really, really cool coffee shops in Singapore and go ahead and add new shops and rate them for me. Which would be really cool for me to see. So, sorry. Okay, so this is the app that you've seen sort of myself and Luke sort of build together from scratch. We started out with a basic map, right, and then we incrementally added new features. We started with, well, let's make the map actually usable for the user. Let's get their current location. Let's place some custom markers and custom controls on there, and then let's talk about, and then let's add features to add a shop, right, and then do it so, and then create an info window and actually do that in the back end, in addition to finding shops and then being able to run it actually on mobile. So this is also a customized UI specifically for mobile, where you can easily get back to your location by clicking on the icon and so forth. It's doing a bounding box query every time my map position changes and so forth. And if you click on Add Shop, you get a drop down which automatically reverse geocodes my current location, the location of the marker I placed down. And there's something actually new that's happening here, which I wanted to show, which is, you notice in the name field that this is actually pre-populated. And it's now, instead of a text input field, we have a drop-down, which contains a list of different places, which gives context to different places that are close within the region of the marker where I'm adding a shop. So if I click around, you'll notice that the name and the address changes. And so this is actually a new feature that we're sort of incrementally rolling out to trusted testers. And it's called the Places API. And the Places API gives you the ability, it's a great way to augment your map to make it even more user-friendly. By passing it a coordinate on a map, it can return back to you a list of interesting places that are close by within that region. You can specify different types of places that you want to look up, like establishments, for example. And so, for those of you who are really interested in learning more about the Places area or getting access to it, I would encourage you guys to go to the web URL up there. So code.google.com/API/maps/documentation/places and sign up for a developer preview to get access to this. The next two slides are just showing a little bit of code on what it looks like using the Places API. Again, this is brand new stuff. No one is a trusted testers group, so you'll have to sign up to get access. And these are the two functions that we used. So we're getting places by sending out a post request to this Places service, right? And then we're getting back some data results about which contains a list of different places close by to that coordinate. And then we're iterating through those places and actually showing it and creating a drop-down box for it in the info window. This is just a little code snippet of the Python, which happens in the back end when we process the request to our Places API. The request has to be signed, a URL signed, and so this is just a snippet of that. Again, I would just encourage you guys to visit documentation, find out more. So, what did we cover today? I showed you the basic steps on building a basic map application, but it's actually usable and it's actually something that's live, something I can currently use on my mobile phone today. And it's really using a very small subset of the different features that are possible in the Maps API, right? We're using, obviously a map, some markers, place some markers, custom overlays, custom controls. We're using map events to make it more user interactive. We're using HTML5 to get user location, a geocoding service, and then direction, and then lastly the Places API. But the Maps API has so much more even beyond those basic features, right? So the map supports polygons. It has an elevation service, which allows you to query at any point, in any coordinate in the world, to be able to get back the elevation data at that location. You can toggle on traffic and bicycling layers in many regions of the world, many countries. You can also, for people who are plotting thousands and thousands of points onto a map, it doesn't really make sense. At some point, there's a threshold where performance starts to become an issue. When you're adding 1,000 different marker objects onto the map, it's going to start to become really slow. So, you can use KML and you can use Fusion table layers as a way to basically you'll do server-side rendering of the tiles with all of these many markers plotted on that and return that back to you. So it's much more efficient, it's much more faster. And then there's styled maps. which gives basically you the ability to really stylize everything in your map tiles, from the color of your roads to what labels are actually being shown, what are not shown, the color of the oceans, the color of the local regions, and so forth. And so it's really, really powerful. Street View, Google Street View in the Maps API version 3, unlike version 2, is all HTML5. So it runs, it can actually run on your mobile devices, which is the primary reason why that happened. In addition to that, it's also possible to do custom street views, right, very easily. So I can show you a slide on that actually later. And then lastly, there's custom map types, which if you have your own tile set, you can overlay your own tiles on there to show more, maybe you have your own tile set that has more specific detail about that location. So I wanted to show you a preview of styled maps. And this is just a simple map, right? This doesn't look anything different. Located in San Francisco, which is where I'm from. And the benefit of styled maps, is anything from branding, right? From branding to just like making your map look very unique, like on your own site. You have your own color scheme, for example. And so I can desaturate a map to make it look very black and white, right? Or I can maybe give it a little bit of color. So these are just like different. These are just different style map tiles that I created, and we have a styled maps wizard, which has this cool little UI which allows you easily to play around and customize your map tiles. So these are just some of the examples of things that you can do with it. You can create really, really pretty maps, or you can create really ugly ones, but it's really up to you, right? We give you the power to do either. So that's really cool. Styled maps is a really great way, easy way to just make your map look very unique and customize the experience. We have different fields or different attributes that you can control in styled maps. You can see here you can control the saturation, the gamma, the lightness to hue. You can invert the lightness and so forth. And it's really easy to apply. So what you see in the styles element, this is just a JSON object with different properties about how to style your map, right? Different colors that it specifies. What attribute of the map do we want to customize and color? But all this stuff, you don't actually have to write this by hand. You can, but we have a styled map wizard, like I was saying before, which automatically generates this JSON object string for you. So that would be a really, really easy way for you to customize your map without actually having to write this by hand. And then from there, we have this new styled map type object, which you pass in your styles JSON object and give it a map. You bind it to a map and give it a name, and then you set it, and that's all it takes. So custom street views is, I wanted to show you a preview of what this looks like. So the guys in Sydney actually took pictures all around the different parts of the Sydney office and created their own custom street view. So if I drag my little Pegman, go around, this is actually in Sydney. This is in the Sydney Google office. You can see now, since it's HTML, right, I can have HTML markers that overlay onto street views, which is, you see that giant Google logo there, which indicates the Google office. So I'm going to go inside the Google office. And these are the guys that actually just went into the office and took panels, right, of different locations in the office, and then spliced them into tile sets and created this cool little demo of using custom street views, which is not possible because, like I said, it's in HTML5. This is what the Sydney Cafe looks like. And you can imagine there's a lot of different use cases that you can do with this. You can, if you have your own buildings, it's something stopping you guys from doing this yourselves. One of my projects, I would love to do this for my own apartment in San Francisco, just as a side project, just to have it as an exercise, right? Just in case I forget what it looks like, So like I said, custom street view, it's essentially, this is just like creating any tile set, custom map tiles in your, for a map type, for example. So you have a panel, right, and then you basically need to slice it up into these square dimensions. So the first property you do is you have to create different tile sets for every zoom level, and then you specify an X and a Y coordinate of where that tile is currently positioned on the map, and there's a custom tile URL template generator that you have to sort of create, so you have to upload all of your tile images onto your server and sort of give it this sort of formatted, this naming scheme, so that in your get custom tile URL function, for example, I didn't mean to do that. Sorry about this. That's what happens when I use HTML5 slides. that was my last slide anyway, actually. So, but I did want to just leave you guys with, I don't know if you can see the documentation anymore, the link to it. Yeah, it's not worth bringing it up again, but yeah, I wanted to just finish off with just showing you what's possible, right, using custom street views. And if you wanted to find out more information, to go to our documentation online. There's tons and tons of information up there to learn about how to use the Maps API. We have everything from simple examples to more interesting ones. And with that, I also would like everyone to go to where'scoffee.appsale.com and put in some stores for me. I guess I'll open it up to questions now. Yes.
Is there a GWT overlay?
Is there a GWT overlay? What was that last?
API.
Oh, API. So your question, you're asking if there's a GWT.
Specifically a Google sponsor.
I see. So creating like a map overlay using GWT?
Well, with overlay, I mean like the GWT.
Matching with, so easily using GWT to program maps.
Correct.
Not that I know of right now in terms of, I'm not sure actually. I don't know if there's a GWT plugin for using the Maps API. I'd imagine it's possible. I don't know of one that's currently built though. Yes?
Is the data source for the Places API the same as for the business listing?
It does. It does query.
Repeat the question, please.
You said she asked. The question was: is the Places API use the same source of the business listings that you can submit right through Google? And I believe yes. Yeah, those are businesses that you register on as a place. Yeah. So I believe it does use that source. Mm-hmm. Any?
If you have to add a crosshair to show what is the current location which will be added as a shop, how can I do that?
How to add a crosshair? So the question is, how do I add a crosshair to the current location of where I'm adding a shop? Is that right? So you want to do that instead of placing a marker there? Is that why? Right. So that's just using either a custom marker image, similar to how we created those custom marker icons like the purple coffee logo or the blue location marker. It's the same concept. You can create your own custom image, put it online, and then you can specify the marker to use that custom icon instead. The alternative to that is you can create your own custom overlay. Creating a custom overlay is very, very simple. And so essentially you can create your own custom, not marker object, but you can create your own custom overlay which applies an image to it which looks like anything that you want. So you can have a crosshair image and then use that as your custom marker. Does that make sense?
Custom overlay will work.
An overlay, yeah.
I don't know the size, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the size of the browser.
Yep.
So I cannot make an image for exact that size to fit the whole area.
Right. Yeah. So custom overlay would work really well for you. Yes, back there.
Has anything changed in terms of market clustering?
Oh, sorry?
The market clustering problem. We have too many markers on the map.
Yes. So the question was, what about market cluster as a solution to showing many markers on the map? And that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up because, yeah, we do have I did want to mention that we do have, in addition to the core API, we have an open source utility library. So it's hosted on Google Code projects. And it's an open source collection of these utility libraries that you can use in addition that interact with your map. So one of them is there's a cluster marker library which actually clusters very efficiently and it's pretty quick, I'd say. But it still gets to the point where it just sometimes makes more sense to if you actually do want to show maybe like sort of a heat map, sort of a way to actually visualize a lot of markers onto one map, onto one area with a cluster of them, not actually just by a number or anything like that, then using KML or using Fusion Tables there, using layers would be a great alternative to that. But the cluster marker library is very, very usable. You had a question back there? What projection is used? The name. So the question was what projection was used, and I'm not like a projections expert, but I should know this. I don't remember on the spot right now, but it's in our documentation, like which projection we use. Is there a projection that you're more in particular curious about?
It's actually spherical Mercator.
Mercator, yeah, that's right. This is what it is.
Are there any plans to change this? Because it's actually
definitely not. I don't think so. Not in the future. Yeah. Yes.
Is the waypoint for the direction surface is customizable? Because different mode of transportation will have different waypoints.
Yes. The question was, are the waypoints in the directions renderer customizable? And the answer is yes. You specify all the different waypoints that you want to go from point A to point B to C to D, E, and so forth. Like I was saying, though, with the free version of the API, there's a max limit of, I believe it's 8 waypoints, which includes your start and destination point. So which means that you have 6 additional waypoints that you can add in the middle to create sort of these waypoints in your directions between your start and end point. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Okay, we have time for one more question, and
Okay.
then we're going to move on to HTML5 and Chrome. Last question?
One more question all the way in the back up there. Are there any plans to have a transit API? In terms of showing transit directions? Yeah. So transit directions are actually, it's more of a legal issue. It's hard to, I can't really comment on that, but it's difficult to actually get transit directions into the API. In terms of getting a transit layer, that might be possible. I don't know of any plans to be adding that anytime soon, but I think the team is definitely interested in finding more layers to put on. Okay, this will be the last one.
Not completely maps related, but how did you embed Android phone thing?
Oh, in my slide?
Yeah, how do you make it because does it fit remote?
Oh, I see. So our application has sort of 2 modes, depending on if it's run on a mobile device or not. The map actually, there's different styles that you can apply to your zoom. Like your zoom buttons, if you notice on the mobile one, look a little bit bigger. There's at the bottom. That's just a different style of your navigation control that you can set in your API. So we basically just created a flag that said if mobile, then change the look and feel of the map to look like this, and we changed the style of the zoom controls and navigation controls and so forth. Otherwise, show the regular map.
You were explicitly asking for the mobile version?
In that example, yes, we passed in a flag, but that's something that we had to program on our end to read that information. Yeah. Okay. Does anybody have any more questions? I think we have a few more minutes. Yes, back there.
Since a lot of this map data locations are shown license by Google, are there any legal implications in terms of what we do?
Are there any?
There is a limitation on doing terms like Internet Gateway, but are there anything that has to be considered?
before launching your own application with our data, or you mean other third-party data?
Well, that uses any data that's
In our APIs. I mean, so there's some basic terms and conditions with the usage of the Maps API, the free API version. I don't know all of them off the top of my head, but I know that we have some policies that state, well, if you use the free API, you can't really run them internally, inside of an internal network. That would require a Premier license, or if you sell it for money, that would require a Premier license as well. So there's things like that off the top of my head that I know of, and we have some geocoding quotas. Like you can do 2,500 geocoding requests per day per IP address. For a Premier license, it's higher than that. And so, in terms of restrictions, I don't think I'm the best person to ask for all of them, but those are some of them that I know off the top of my head.
All right, I kind of forgot one vital thing this morning. You guys need a break, huh? Yes? Anybody? Break? Bathroom? Lunchies? We have a break for 15 minutes before we do the HTML5 home stuff, so feel free to come back at before 11, please. Thank you.
Thank you.